Phantom Fixer here with you again. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's actually a video response to a video that was put up originally by Ant, and it was responded to by Vince Venturella. And I wanted to give it a response also because I think I'm going to bring a slightly different take to it than maybe Vince did. So anyway, the position of the original video was why play Age of Sigmar at all? I find myself enjoying the heck out of it. I like the fluff. I like all the things around it. So I thought I might answer the points in the video. Now, in his original video, he's not raging about the game or anything like that. He's posing a question about why should I play this game? This is just in response to that. So the assumptions for me in this video are the fact that I never played Warhammer Fantasy Battles, not even one time. I don't have any of the baggage that came from having played previous editions, so I think I can give a different viewpoint. I don't say a better one, just a different one. Back in my younger days, I could never afford fantasy battles, and then when I could start affording to play games, there was just too many models, and the rule set was too huge. I didn't want to get into another system like that. But as everybody knows, I've been a fanboy for GW for a long time. I've played most of their stuff. And when Age of Sigmar came out, I was hooked. Now, the points I want to address that were brought up in the video, he talks about play balance and competitive play. My thought on any game has always been, is any game balanced ever? As long as you're playing with two people that have a different skill level, you'll never make a balanced game. You can give two people the exact same list, put them on a table where the terrain is exactly mirror image of each other, and you'll get different games because one person is simply better than the other. One person uses terrain better. Now, you take out that equal army lists, and you get to the point of, in some games, if I can afford the better stuff, I'm going to win. Play balance is I don't understand why companies are hammered so much for play balance. Now, if games are really tilted towards one side, it's one thing. But screaming about play balance in a game, I think has always been screaming into the wind because no company can balance a game the minute they release it. Everything changes when it gets out in the wild. The beauty of our hobby is the communities balance games by themselves. We do it when we want to do competitive play, when we want to do tournament play. We always do it. And I think GW's thought on this was, why not let the community do that part of the work? They're going to do it anyway. No matter what system they put out, people were going to do it themselves. I think the community always decides how competitive play goes down. He brings up points about structure to the game, and Vince brought up a very interesting point where he said no structure is structure. And I think he summed up my thought perfectly on that. You can add anything to the game of Age of Sigmar and not break the core rules. The time of war rules that they have are that concept in action. Time of war allows you to do and make sweeping changes to how the game is going to be played without having to sit there and make exceptions and break the basic game rules. You don't have those to break, so you don't have to sit there and worry about it. Ant brings up a point about he feels a need for USRs, Universal Special Rules. Rules are spread across war scrolls, and even the same named rule is different among different war scrolls. And I have to disagree with him on that point. I think it's better to put no USRs in the rules and have them repeated on each war scroll that needs them. And this is a 40k background kind of thing, because I've seen how they put a USR in the rule book, but then when it gets to the individual unit that uses that USR, sometimes they actually change it, alter the way it works just for that unit. That, to me, leads to confusion and clutter. I would rather see rules implemented on each war scroll like they have done it, so that there's no question this unit does it this way, rather than saying in the rules there's a USR that says this is how it always works, and then when it's applied across 8 war scrolls, it's always different. I kind of disagree with him on the USR thing. But that's just me coming from 40k, where the USRs, I think, sometimes are very, very poor and have to be changed by the units so that they're implemented the way they intend them to be. So that's just my thought on that. The other thing with structure in Age of Sigmar is that the game is, you can see from just the first read of the rules, it's a scenario game. It is not a put models on the table and let's see what happens kind of game. They designed this from the ground up to be scenario based. It's what makes the game fun. I know if you don't play with any scenario, it does become silly and it becomes a little pile into the center, and what fun is that? When you start playing through the scenarios and making up your own, the game is a blast. It's absolutely tons of fun to play, for me at least. He brought up the minimalist rules or small rules. I think when you take the sum total of the 4-page rule book, as well as all the rules that are on the War Scrolls, you get just as big a rule set as virtually any game out there. By having a 4-page set of basic rules and everything on the War Scrolls, you do make a game that's easy to balance, to maintain for them and balance at their level. Notice that their balance is not necessarily the same as what we consider balance in the gaming world. The danger to having that super small rule set is that if you change anything in that basic rule set, that change propagates across all these War Scrolls and you may actually do more harm than good. So if they changed a simple concept like retreat causes you to have to not move for a turn, well, that would break a lot of armies. That would do a lot of crazy things. So they can't really mess with that core rule set too much. And we all know the core rule set needs a little bit of work. I'll get into that here in a second. But also the minimalist rules, the game does become approachable to more people. There's real people out there with real world time constraints. You don't have time to be going through a 300-page rule book in your off time, as well as painting, as well as building. I think it helps make the game more approachable. Some of the cons to the game that I want to address as we move forward, I understand why there is some serious misgivings and rage about the game. I think GW killed 30 years worth of fluff and very established gameplay with very, rank on rank army stuff. They crushed that in one fell swoop. They killed it all. And like it or not, the Fantasy Battles crowd, they felt hurt and abandoned by that. And I don't blame anybody for that. You take a game I've been playing for that long and invested that much into, and you immediately change it to a whole different kind of game and say, no, really, it's the same thing. I don't think you can get away with that. And so I think that was just horrid. The rollout of the game, I think, was horrid. They made a lot of missteps along the way. I think far too much time elapsed between the end of End Times and the rollout of Sigmar. I think a lot of the people who bought into that End Times, and there was a lot of really nice, expensive books that came out and all that stuff. I think when they announced that, hey, this is the End Times and it's really ending, I don't know if a lot of those people felt like, I spent a lot of money on this stuff to get a month or two's worth of play out of it, and then you change the game completely, making this thing a waste of my money. I think that was terrible. One of the other things that in the basic rules, the sudden death, triumphs, victory conditions that are in the rule set they're stupid. Every scenario I've ever seen tells you not to use those. Why even put them in the basic rules if everything you publish, GW, is going to say don't use those? They're not going to work for this. So I think that was a big misstep. And if there was a hard, fast limit of 4 pages for these rules, why did you waste 3 columns worth of information on stuff that no one's ever going to use? The other thing that gets me is they made a massive change to the game with hardly any information or lead up. I didn't see any leaks of information. Now, at the time, I wasn't involved with listening to Warhammer/Sigmar podcasts and all that stuff. So maybe that info was out there. Maybe those leaks were there and I just didn't know about them. But as someone who played 40K and other games, I didn't see a lead in to Age of Sigmar. I saw the rollout and went, wow, they changed everything. Even I knew as a neophyte to the game that they changed everything. More cons, the rules aren't tight. Even at 4 pages, I mean, literally Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, how can you blow 4 pages of rules? Base on base stacking? Are you kidding me? This is 2016, right? Measuring from models? I mean, I thought that concept went dead ages ago, but evidently not. The 4-page limit, why do you have those ludicrous victory systems in there? Just a waste of a page. Some other problems with AoS, larger games, I mean, over 100 models per side, I think might get very tedious. But again, this is a skirmish game, not a rank-on-rank army game. So the people that like those really large numbers, I think are going to be a little off-put by that. Another knock against AoS is the no points, no list building features. And I mean, let's face it, a lot of us are involved in GW gaming because we enjoy that aspect, that list building, the math hammering, trying to think of, will all my stuff fulfill all the needs I need them to do in a game? And you've eliminated that completely. That stuff is gone. And for a lot of people, that was a lot of the fun, was getting around and talking about what to use to fill certain holes in your army and how many points, and could you build a unit of this to do that with the points you had left over. That's all gone immediately. I think that hurts a lot of the game as well. But again, for new players like me, I never got into fantasy list building, so I don't miss it at all. I think it's kind of nice to just pull out my war scrolls and say, here's my stuff. Let's go. Another con, they talk about all the old world factions are still there, except for the ones that aren't. Well, guys, really, wiped out Tomb Kings. What's next? Don't say that everything is going to be where you expect it when you know damn well you're going to get rid of a lot of things. And again, the other con is it's a skirmish game. If you don't like that style of gaming, you're not going to like Sigmar. That's it. You're not going to like it. No matter what is added or, functionality is changed in the game, you're not going to like it if that's not the kind of gaming you enjoy. I think they've, I don't want to say painted themselves into a corner, but they've put themselves into a box, and they better hope that the box works. As far as the pros to Age of Sigmar, I find a lot of these, and again, I'm coming from a place where I don't have any of the old Fantasy Battles stuff holding me back. The idea that the war scrolls and the rules and everything that way is free is amazing to me. And what I thought was interesting, the Seraphon book has come out. The Dwarven Fire Slayers are out. I wondered if they would take those PDFs down from their website so that people would be kind of forced to get the big expensive print version of Lizardmen in order to play them. Well, they're still there. So they do intend for that stuff to be free. And again, the Seraphon book, it's pretty, it's new, it's got color plates, and it's got the new fluff. In order to play the game of Sigmar, you can still do it with the free download from the GW site. Nothing changes. So I think that is a good idea. And I think they're doing that really to soften the impact because of what they did to all the established fantasy players. And, I don't know about you guys, but I can't believe they're doing anything for free. Another pro is scenery matters in Age of Sigmar. Scenery was, from what I gather from fantasy players, but really it was a pain in the butt when you were moving your movement trays and everything else. Now, scenery isn't just something on the table to make it look good. There's a lot of impact. It has a lot of impact. Scenarios could be built around scenery pieces. So I think that's fantastic. I love it. I love boards chock full of scenery, woods, terrain, buildings, the whole 9 yards. I love that. When I get to Sigmarines, this is seriously what drew me to the game was the look of the Stormcast Eternals. The Stormcast are what drugged me in from the 40k world because, gosh, they look a lot like my Space Marines. They're organized like Space Marines. I like the fluff with them. I think they're a really good hook, and I think that was a good move on their part to bring them out first. Again, a pro is it's a skirmish type game. If you like that, you're going to like it. Maneuver and timing are super critical in this game, Age of Sigmar. You have to like that idea. It's not maneuvering a tray of models. It's maneuvering one or two figures on a base that becomes more important now. And if you don't want to drill down to that level, you're not going to like it. But if you do enjoy that, it's fantastic. Another pro, the initiative double turn mechanic. I love that. Absolutely love it. You don't get to predict things in real life. So why do people think they should be omniscient when they're playing a game? The double turn, the chance of a double turn adds all kinds of flavor to the game, and it adds those butt-clenching moments that you just don't know what's going to happen next. I love that, and you have to plan for it. You literally have to plan, is my unit in a place where if I lose, my opponent gets a double turn, is he going to be wiped out because I placed him badly? I think there's a lot of tactics there. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. It's very interesting. You can lose because of the initiative double turn mechanic, but you can also win. So, everybody that says I lost a game because of it, well, there's another guy out there that said I won because of it. Another great thing about Sigmar, it's high fantasy. This is not a game that's mired in the moldering old world, the 1400s Renaissance. This is an area where they can do anything. You can do anything with the scenery, the terrain. They can roll out new armies, new factions, new types of units. I even said Tyranids in the forest, anybody? So they're free to do whatever they want. One of the things that did sort of hold me back from fantasy was looking at the old worlds, and I kept up with the fluff. I didn't want to play in that type of world that's sort of stuck in this pseudo-Renaissance, pseudo-feudal knight, pseudo-fantasy. I like pure fantasy. I can create my own realms. Now, hell, I could create the old world or recreate it if I wanted to. I love that freedom. Now, on pros, I'm also going to list the 4-page rule set as a pro as well, because I didn't need to get a PhD for it. It's a decent set of rules. It's good. It's simple. It's deceivingly complex. I mean, shorter doesn't mean lame. It means that they don't take a lot of time to explain every single exception to the rules. I like that. It's short, it's tight, all the rules are on the war scrolls, makes things easy. Because of the short rule set, they can add anything they want without busting up the system. You can have campaign books, how, Mighty Empire campaigns can come back. All that great stuff can make a reappearance. Also, for Age of Sigmar, the tactics are back. Now, I'm not saying that fantasy didn't have tactics. I like skirmish game tactics. And another pro is that it appeals to other folks that are within the GW community. I'm pretty sure they were aiming this game squarely at the 40k players. I don't know why they decided that the fantasy crowd wasn't worth aiming a game at, but they decided that it was the skirmish type, 40k type people that were going to be who they approached with this game. And you also have to look at the fact that it has a lower price point to get into. Fantasy, you could not get into as a new person. You simply couldn't. It was very expensive, very time consuming, and you had to be in love with it in order to get into it, and you couldn't really fall in love with it if you weren't already into it. I think that's why the community was sort of dying, and the money was not being spent. Let's face it, GW is a game company. They make money. Another pro is right back to there's no points army list building mechanic. There's no requirements. I don't have to buy X amount of these in order to field this. I can just put the models I want on the table without worrying about whether or not I had the other guy to make him available. Some of the other great parts about having no points and no list building structure is we get to do it. The community gets to do it. If GW had put out a system, everyone was going to hate it. It's a law of wargaming. If GW puts out a system, the community hates it. Now we get to figure out what we like. The Azir comp, the South Coast GT, the Clash comp, all of these are great systems, and people are putting a lot of effort into them, and I don't know which one's going to, or what melding of them is going to become the standard, but I know one of them will, because they're fantastic, and the guys behind them really love them. And this is what happens is, organized play is always designed by the people that enjoy it. It should not be decided by the people who make the rules and determine what the units are going to be, because they have a tilted view. GW has a tilted view of what competitive play looks like. They don't like competitive play. Why should they be in charge of designing it? So with the community designing what competitive play looks like, I think you're going to find a much better system comes out of that. The other nice part about that is releasing a set of rules without that sort of competitive play overhead, the point systems, the list requirements. Casual players, people that just come into the game because it looks kind of fun, they don't have to read through all that drudgery. They don't have to slog through all of that mind-bogglingly complex, which it does get to, stuff that's imposed by these defined systems. Instead, they can say, oh, I want to buy a box of that, and a box of that, and a box of that. And they look at the guy at the game store, and he says, yep, those will all work together. Here you go. Give me your money. I think that's a big pro for the game. It's a big paradigm shift for GW. I'm very surprised at them doing it, but I applaud them for it. Now let's see if it works over time. As conclusions, from the things that I brought out, is Age of Sigmar going to replace Warhammer Fantasy Battles? No. And I don't think it was ever meant to. This thing, like I said, is a complete paradigm shift for GW. They're trying something completely new. I don't believe it was ever meant to replace fantasy. Are the Warhammer Fantasy Battles people going to come back to the game? Some already have, some will over time, and some will never. And it's okay. If this is not a game you want to play, no one should be browbeating you over the head to say, no, you have to like it, it's good. Because if it's not your bag, don't play it, man. Just don't. Is 8th edition going to die? This is something that's confused me as someone that's coming in from the outside. As far as I know, nothing changed for 8th edition fantasy. No rules were changed. It's still out there. I don't believe any of the print disappeared from the books, so it's still there. And yet, ETC, the European Team Championships, and some other things, like conventions and all this stuff, are switching game systems. They're going to Kings of War. They're going to these other things. Why do you do that? Why? 8th edition didn't stop. It didn't become disapproved. I don't understand. It's crazy to me that people are just... Amazingly, AoS came out and 8th edition was like, you can't play that anymore. It's illegal to do. No, you can still play 8th. Your game club can still play 8th until the cows come home. Conventions can still have 8th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle convention. I don't understand why everybody feels like you have to change games. But again, I'm new to the community. I never was in the fantasy battle community and never will be. I don't understand why it's changing, but perhaps there's something to it. Maybe 8th was so bad that it has to be changed. And the folks that don't want to go to AoS realize it has to change. Something has to go. The Sigma rage that's out there, the people that still hate AoS because it's horrible and anyone who plays it is a... Really? I never have understood that. Just because you play a different game than me, okay, you play your game, man. Enjoy it. Don't tell me how to have fun, and don't tell me that I can't possibly have fun with a game because it's so stupid. So, In summary, why do you want to play Age of Sigmar? Because it's great skirmish fun with armies that you already have. So if you like skirmish type games, you already have everything you need to play, and you're already well grounded in everything. Another reason is it's a blank canvas. You can do anything with it. If you want to create a campaign, if you want to create your own time of war, if you want to recreate the old world, you can do all of that stuff. It's like I said right there, don't wait for the spoon to feed you. Go out and build a better spoon. If you're not liking the campaigns that they're putting out, do your own. It takes not long at all to do that sort of thing because the system is so open and so free. Another reason I think it's far more narrative and cinematic than the old Fantasy Battles game. I watched a lot of Fantasy Battle games in play. I never got that feeling of, this is really cool. I never really saw it that way. I saw it as, it's really neat, and I appreciate the effort that went into it. But I never got that whole, this is a story from a novel that is being recreated. Never saw that. The game of Age of Sigmar is tactically engaging and mentally stimulating. It's a lot harder than you think. And I think people look at 4 pages of rules and go, oh, that's too simple, that's stupid. Well, it's not. You don't need 10,000 rules. I can give you the rules to chess in about 5 minutes. I know everybody uses that analogy, but it's true. Another great reason to play Sigmar is you already know the background, the fluff. The fluff is obviously changing as you go, but you know what these units are. If you see a Skaven unit, you can look at it and go, oh, look, that's a X. So you don't have to relearn everything or learn a whole new set of some things. So I think the freedom is another great reason to play AoS, because you can play it your way. No one is dictating to you what your army must look like. You tell the world what your army's gonna look like. Freedom is a wonderful thing. And, my last, why do you play Sigmar? Because it works. It just flat out works. If you try it without thinking back to, well, this is what it used to do in 8th edition. Well, no, we're not in 8th edition. Turn the page. I come without the baggage of ever having played fantasy, and that's where all these points come from. I never did fantasy. This is why I like Sigmar. It just works. You can play the game from the minute you pick it up. That was my long-winded why to play Age of Sigmar. I hope somebody gets something out of it, or laughs their fool head off at what an idiot I am. I don't care. So this is just my response, and I hope you dig it. I will link to the original Ant video and Vince Venturella's reply in the notes so that you can see what this is all from. And with that, I will say have a great weekend. Enjoy, everybody.